So today we're gonna have a talk about one of my favorite roses in the garden, Wisley 2008. Now I have a personal relationship with Wisley, and I want to sit down and have a talk with you guys about this rose because I absolutely love it. It doesn't look like much right now, but we did do a previous video on this rose, and we have some good footage and photos from Wisley 2008 that we'll be including throughout this video so you guys can actually see what it looked like when it was already blooming. But before we do that, let's get our cafecito and go sit down and have a chat.
Hello garden friends, so I'm making myself into the video because we started it a very different way this time. We were actually just going to do the piece where Ambrose was just going to talk about the rose, but then we really started to think about it. We enjoy doing the chats and the sits down and talking about the roses, but we did not expect, we thought we were gonna bore you.
Yeah, so doing a sit down and having a long drawn out conversation, talking about roses, it's a lot of patience, requires a lot of patience, and I know there's a whole different audience for that when it comes to talking about roses. And so we had already shot the video for Wisley and Teasing Georgia, which will come up next, but we shot those videos and then we started to see all the comments of everybody enjoying the actual sit down and talk. So we decided, you know what, we're gonna have to redo this again and have a sit with some coffee and do the whole talk again.
The whole cafecito thing is just so lovely to do, especially when it has to do with roses. And when we were done and Ambrose was gonna start editing the videos, it just felt like something was missing so badly, and this is it. This is it. So let's get into a little bit more about what you about the rose, because one thing is, that's Ambrose rose. I love it so much too, but I don't know. I think it's the most beautiful pink rose that we have in the garden.
Yeah, so Wisley is a very shallow cup rose with about 90 petals, and it grows to about 2 to 3 inches across. So far from what we've seen, I think it's about average about 2 inches across, but a very lovely rose. Absolutely looks amazing. And
with time also, that's one of the things that we've noticed. In the beginning, it got a lot of black spot. It was suffering through some things that Ambrose explained to you all about, but I did notice that with time, she became a lot more disease resistant. Yeah, you'll see, here and there black spot like any other rose, but but it's not bad. And also a great way we found that out too was because last year having the moving here, right? Had just moved here. We had her also in a shady area, and we found out how great she takes the shade. And her leaves were actually very healthy. Very, very healthy and green and beautiful all the time. All the time with leaves. Doesn't bloom a lot.
No, not a lot. But
here and there.
Yeah. So before we continue going, so getting back to what I was talking about earlier in the beginning of the video, the personal connection I have with Wisley. So we bought Wisley as a bare root rose, and when we first planted her in the ground, we started to see some growing, and then all of a sudden, like Angie said, we had the black spot, and it started to not perform as well. So in our last garden, we had a front bed that was completely waterlogged. So I decided, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and dig up Wisley and figure out what is going on, because it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing the way it was when we first planted it. And so what I found out very quickly was there was a lot of root rot happening because of the waterlogged area in the front of that garden. So we pulled her out, put her in a container, and absolutely started doing fine after that. Now when we talk about the container, and I will show some video here where there's some yellowing on the leaves. Now, a lot of people might mistake that for a disease, and might mistake that as mildew or whatever the case is, or even mosaic virus, but it's actually not, because the container that Wisley's in, it's suffering from nutrient intake. So the container is that small to where it's taking up all the nutrients it can from that container, that it's starting to show some yellowing in the leaves. So it's low on iron, low on fertilization. Just some of the things I want to throw out there for you guys to understand why some of your roses in containers may be showing some yellowing, not necessarily some disease, because there is no black spot on it. It's just a lot of yellowing on the leaves.
And this is, this is one of the questions that we get asked a lot, how roses do in containers. They do great, but once they outgrow their container, they're put into stress. And there's where you do not want a rose to be stressed, because you're just causing more problems. After, once they become stressed, now you got more black spot. Now you got other issues with the rose, and you don't want that. You don't want to put them through that.
No, definitely not. getting back to Wisley, what do you like about
Well,
Wisley?
what I wanted to talk about is not seeing. I think this rose to Ambrose is very special because it's one of those things where you think you fail, but the failure becomes knowledge.
Yeah, it becomes
learned.
a lot of knowledge because then you start to research and find out what is going on with this rose and why is it not doing what it's doing. And I think, you know, it's a combination of own root roses and bare root roses, and that's a whole nother topic for a video. But the fact that it's on a rootstock is something that I've learned recently, you know, why roses do what they do and why they don't do what they do. So when Angie says, you know, it's a very personal relationship with this rose, it's because I've spent a lot of time trying to nurture this rose back to what it needs to be and what it's supposed to be.
There was a lot of knowledge taken in. You know, we could have just easily been like, oh, it's sick. Let's, let's not deal with it and throw it out because, but he actually took it upon himself to go ahead. He actually, he asked around and first thing was like, it's a goner, get rid of it, start overs. And no, he was very persistent. He kept going. I learned a lot from it. So this has to do with a whole other rose, and it has to do with Lady Emma Hamilton. I know we've been getting asked, where is she? We will be talking about her on another video, but unfortunately, she's not here with us no more. And I hate saying it because I loved her so much, but because of Wesley finding out, that there was something going on in the root system, it made us see that something was happening with Emma too, with Lady Emma Hamilton. And she had been doing amazing for us. And then in the beginning, then we moved here. She was still doing great for a little while. And I just started to notice a very decreased in everything she was doing. Her flowering would be amazing off and on, and her leaves would come on. It was like she was trying so hard and she would stop. So what I know is that when we first got here, I had her in a big container. I moved her around a lot because I was trying to figure out the area. And what happened there was that we didn't have I didn't have a way to move her at the time.
We were dragging it basically everywhere we needed to.
I was dragging it. And so what I did was disturb her roots a lot. So one day we just decided to take her out and find out, because it reminded me of how Wesley was acting.
So very interesting conversation, because we actually just had a comment about where she is at.
Emma?
So I hope that answers whoever asked that comment. But those are part of learning about roses and understanding, how to take care of them. And it's just something that we've been taken up a lot as far as the education goes. But getting back to Wisley, so Angie mentioned, trying again with Wisley. And one of the most interesting things that I find having this conversation is that Wisley 2008 is actually an improvement from Wisley, the original rose that David Austin produced, because it didn't do what it wanted for him. He wasn't happy with its disease resistance, its growth, or whatever the case was. So that's why it's named Wisley 2008, because he improved upon that rose. And so kind of like what he did with that rose, I kind of took it upon myself to learn more about it and do what I need to do to get that rose to thrive and perform the way it's supposed to perform. And I think that's pretty interesting that conversation came up, because Wisley still gets the name and still gets a lot of hits because of the old variety, but this new variety is absolutely wonderful. I love the cup. I love the color of the pink. It's almost the lightest pink in the garden.
So I love it, because this rose, even though it doesn't have a beautiful shape, it grows very, canes are long and unruly and crazy.
It has an arching habit.
But it's very elegant. So I personally would love to have it, and we're still working on our area here, but I would love to have it, I think it's perfect for a bed, a mixed border bed, and having it right on the edge, just spilling over because of her shape. She just looks that beautiful. And I love those shallow cups. They're just so perfect. And she doesn't bloom, through the whole year, just here and there. But it's beautiful to see her when she does, Wesley, when it does come into bloom. It makes up for it, though, when it blooms, and it blooms in bouquets. It's just the most beautiful and perfect show. We also, have you'll be seeing a lot of pink in our garden, because we plant pink because of our oldest daughter, which she's autistic, and she loves pink. So that's one of her favorite roses. And actually, Angelina, our daughter, she was out here when was it, yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday.
And she saw Olivia Austin in bloom. And I thought she would have been going crazy for Olivia, but
she chose Wisley 2008 as her rose in the garden.
Yeah, so she loves, even though it's a very small flower, it's just perfection.
So, like Angie said, it's a very wild growing rose. It can grow about 5 feet tall and wide, and it has a very arching cane. So it's a perfect rose if you like or want to peg a rose. That's a perfect rose to do it with. And it loves to grow laterally on its cane. So that's something that, you know, being in a container, we're not able to do. And that maybe that's something we can do later in the future, maybe put in the ground depending on where we go from here. But it's a lovely rose. I absolutely love it.
That's another I would actually want. And I told him this from the beginning, from day one when I saw her flower, saw Wesley flower. I told him that's one I would love to have one day in our forever home, multiples of.
Yep.
Planted sort of like in a wild garden type of look. I would love to do that.
And not to mention, so talking more about Wisley, is the fragrance of Wisley.
Yes.
I absolutely love it. I get and it says in there it's a raspberry tea scent. I do get that tea scent, and I absolutely love the way it smells. It has a beautiful tea scent. It's just something that I wish we had more of, because it competes with a lot of the other roses around here. So you have a lot of different fragrances going in the garden, but Wisley absolutely smells wonderful. I know Angie said she had a different kind of smell, maybe?
No, I think it also, sometimes there could be like a myrrh in there somewhere, but I think it has more of the tea, raspberry.
Yeah,
the raspberry fruity tea, you know? But it is one that we love a lot.
Yeah, so...
we'll be actually planting it pretty soon in this fall in a bigger container.
Yeah, definitely, like I talked about, we're going to up pot that rose to give it some more room to grow. The roots need to spread in that one, and again, that's why we see that yellow leafing going on. Another thing about Wisley is if you're looking for a rose with not a lot of thorns, Wisley does not have that many thorns. It likes to grow on long canes and produce its florets above the foliage. So that's one plus. It's a great cutting rose if you want to use it as well. But again, it doesn't have a lot of thorns compared to a lot of the other roses we have in the garden.
Okay, so I think that's a lot on Wisley.
Yeah.
You know, still learning on.
Yeah, so I mean,
through the years we'll be learning more about how this rose does, but this is what's been doing for us, you know, in our garden, our experience with it.
Yeah, so I mean, so not a lot of cons to Wisley. I mean, that's I know we've been throwing out some cons about some roses. I think the only con you mentioned earlier, that it doesn't bloom a lot, and I think it's really we don't have that much experience with Wisley as far as.
But I love that about some roses, that they you know, they're not those bloomers, those that are constantly in bloom or blooming all the time. But it's nice that once in a while you see them, and it's so pretty because you miss them.
Oh yeah.
It gives you that little chance to miss them, that opportunity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's why I think she's very, you know, Wisley's very, very special for us here. It's just like Gertrude, you know, soon, you know, as slowly as you can see, the first flush is already starting to calm down. But then, you know, as it's gonna make its second one, and then we won't see this beautiful rose for a while, we'll miss it, and it's gonna be amazing again.
Yeah.
It's nice to miss a rose, you know, a little bit.
Yep. So I think that's pretty much all we can say about Wisley. Overall, like I said, it's a great rose. I think we need more experience with it, and just a little bit more time with Wisley as far as in a bigger container.
And in growing in the ground.
Yeah, and maybe growing in the ground.
I think it would be an amazing rose to grow in the ground, any rose, but I don't know. I just love that it gets wild. That's I love wild looking roses.
So that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying these sit-down talks, because I know we received a lot of comments, and we really absolutely wanted to do this video the same way again. Just to not lose or you know, interrupt the feeling and the flow of what we're doing here, because I know a lot of people are very interested and excited about these rose chats, because I mean, we get excited about roses, and we can sit here and this video could be an hour long.
I think it's very different when one talks about roses. It's a whole different audience too, and it's growing roses is more having patience, doing a lot of reading. That's why I brought books out here, so you can see that we have this is just a little bit of what we
Yeah.
have. We save our catalogs from David Austin. We look for many books to buy and
yeah.
have tons of rose books, old, new ones, whatever we can find.
Yeah.
And just it's knowledge, just knowledge and trying to understand.
Yep. So I know a lot of people have been asking about rose care. We didn't forget, and I know it's getting later in the season, but that's something we're definitely working on together because we want to put the best possible video together as far as when it comes to rose care. So that's something that'll come out soon, and we'll be getting deep into that conversation about rose care. But I know I said it already, but I'm going to say it again. That's going to be it for the video. Make sure that when you see these videos pop up, you have your cafecito ready because it's always enjoyable to be out here and have some coffee. If you haven't hit that like button, definitely hit the like button if you like these videos. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys in the next video.